Hi guys, welcome back to the Social Tune. And today we're going to check out the worst albums of 2016. Okay, now that we finally got the hits out of the way, we can finally focus on the year of music as a whole. And I'll be blunt, 2016 was a pretty great year for music. Okay, sure, we didn't quite reach the highs of last year, but we also avoided the lows of last year, to the point where I really couldn't find 10 records that I hated enough to put on this list, which means that it's actually a top 9, not a top 10. And I'd also like to preface this by saying that no, I did not check out that Simple Plan record that everyone was telling me was so awful, because everyone was telling me it was so awful, meaning it doesn't qualify for this list because I haven't listened to it in full. So if there's a record that isn't on this list and you're wondering why it wasn't, I either didn't check it out or I didn't think it was quite as bad as you did. So if there is a record like that, please post it in the comments and I will tell you what I thought of it. And with that in mind, let's dive into our 9 worst albums of 2016.
You to the mall and get you a new outfit. Girl, that's just some child's play. Bounce that shit like whoa, whoa, whoa.
This was easily the most overhyped album of the year. It was the #1 album of the year. It sold over 1 million copies in its first day of sales. And it was shit. Okay, that's not quite fair. It wasn't that it was awful, it was just that it was a huge disappointment. This entire album is just a bore, with some of Drake's weakest songs to date and none of his strongest. There is not a single song on this album I would return to. So yeah, it wasn't exactly awful, it was more that there wasn't really anything good on it, or at least nothing that was good for me, which is why it's only at number 9. But still, if you haven't checked out this record yet, you probably won't at this point, but I'm still gonna tell you to just skip it.
I don't wanna sit still, look pretty. You get off on a 9 to 5 dream of picket fences and trophy wives, but no, I'm never gonna be.
If you saw my top 10 worst hit songs of 2016, this should not surprise you. In fact, I'm kind of surprised this isn't higher on the list, but look, at least Daya's trying. On this entire album, you have the feeling that she's trying so hard to be good, and that she's just failing miserably. And because of those good intentions, I am willing to forgive quite a bit of this. So yeah, while this is pretty bad, and I wouldn't really recommend it, it's not the worst we got this year, but it's still bad enough to qualify for this list.
You know how to spend it. You know how to blow it up. It's getting so expensive.
Okay, no joke, this might just be the worst album of the year. Every single one of these songs is almost fascinatingly awful. In fact, you know what? Scratch the almost. This album is so bad in such an entertaining way that I really can't bring myself to put it any higher than number 7. And in fact, this is the only album on this list that I will recommend you check out. But yeah, there's a reason it's here, because it is god awful. Just another reason why Gwen Stefani never should have gone solo. On to the next one.
I know I can treat you better than he can, and any girl like you deserves a...
I swear to God, if Shawn Mendes was a worse singer, this would be way higher on this list. Because not only is Treat You Better the second worst hit song of this year, but this entire album is just reprehensible. I'm not kidding when I say that pretty much every single song here makes my stomach churn, even if admittedly some of them sound okay. But yeah, on every single track he is dodging responsibilities left and right, and he really is completely inexcusable. So I guess if you're a fan of Shawn Mendes, you probably don't care about what I have to say about this, but considering how manipulative this album is, I really wouldn't recommend it to any of you. Please avoid this. I'll be honest, I was curious about this album. I heard that Feel Invincible track and thought, well, this isn't too bad. Of course, after hearing that track another 5 times, I can now freely admit that it is god-awful, but there's just something so pathetic about this album. It reminds me a lot of that Five Finger Death Punch album that was released last year. Not quite as repulsive as that album was, but it's pathetic in the same way, trying to recapture something that you had in the past that you just don't have anymore. And again, while this may not be quite as reprehensible as that album, more completely stupid than anything remotely unpleasant, I still wouldn't recommend it. Just avoid it.
So baby, pull me closer in the backseat of your Rover that I know you can't afford. Bite that tattoo on your shoulder.
At number 4, we have the first album on this list I legitimately loathe. I stand by that Don't Let Me Down is a good song, but like I've already said in a number of videos now, it's the only good song on this album. Every single other song is just the Chainsmokers jerking themselves off when they're not being boring as hell. And sure, while there's not a song as terrible as #selfie on this album, there are very few albums with a song as bad as #selfie on them, so that's not exactly a compliment. So yeah, in 2017, can we please just not have any more Chainsmokers on the charts? Because I am clearly not the only one who is sick to death of them. Avoid this album like the plague.
Don't need nobody else, nuh-uh. If I was you, I'd wanna be me too. I'd wanna be me too. I'd wanna be me.
Well, this shouldn't surprise any of you. I'll be honest, apart from the change in sound, quality-wise, this is pretty much on exactly the same level as her last album. Meaning it's got some god-awful tracks, and then some that are just boring. There's nothing remotely good on either of these albums. And again, we just need to get rid of Meghan Trainor. We've already had Me Too. I do not want to have Watch Me Do on the charts next. So once again, Meghan Trainor, I beg of you, please just go away.
I loved you dangerously. More than the air that I breathe.
I will give this album this. It has one good song on it, Some Type of Love, but that's it. I hate every single other song on this album. Apart from that one song, there is nothing that comes remotely close to passable. I already put 2 songs from this album on my worst hits of the year list, and they're not even the worst songs here. And yes, Marvin Gaye shows up on this album, which is another strike against it, but even then, that's not the worst song on this album. Basically what I'm saying is, can we please get rid of Charlie Puth before we get, say, Dangerously or Suffer as singles, because I never want to see those songs anywhere near the top 10. Guys, I'm begging you, follow my advice and boycott this guy as fast as possible, because unlike Shawn Mendes, he has nothing good to offer. But with that said, it's not quite the worst album of the year, and if you saw my worst albums of last year, you probably already predicted this would make it here.
Money don't mean nothing over here.
I stand by what I said last year. Ray Shrimmer are rock bottom in terms of music quality. The fact that they have a song at number 1 now is not surprising, but it is a huge disappointment. And admittedly, while Black Beatles isn't their worst song, that does not mean it's good, guys. The fact that so many people have given this album a pass because it's better than their last album is kind of astonishing to me, because that album was one of the worst albums I had ever heard in my life. And again, while this album is slightly better, that is not to say that it's anywhere near passable or good or excusable. And you know what? Even though Ray Shrimmer have a number 1 single at the moment, they have never seemed less relevant. No one is talking about this album because there is nothing worth talking about here. It's easily my pick for the worst album of the year, for pretty much all the reasons I called Shrem Life one of the worst albums of last year. But again, it's not the worst thing I've ever heard. And while this is a much shorter video than you're probably used to from me, I don't want to give these albums any more exposure than they've already got at this point. So yeah, fuck these albums, and now that I've finally got them out of the way, I can finally focus on the real positives. Next up, I'll be looking at the best albums of 2016, followed by my top 50 songs of the year overall. So please subscribe so you don't miss a thing, and until then, I'm Finn, and this is The Social Tunes, signing off.